Why do Catholics do so many weird things, right? Especially at Mass. Sometimes people will show up to a Catholic wedding or a Catholic funeral, or maybe they have family or friends who invite them to church on Christmas or Easter. And a lot of times people are very confused. It seems very different from other churches they've been in. A lot of times in non-Catholic churches, right, it's kind of just like a big long Bible study, like a big long sermon. It's all about the scriptures, right? But when you go to a Catholic Mass, there's all sorts of rituals we go through. There's kneeling, there's standing, there's sitting, there's different prayers we have memorized, all these different things. Why is it that Catholics do so many of those weird things, right? It's actually one of the coolest things about Catholicism, at least in my opinion, right? One of the really cool things about Catholicism is that we believe we are living the fulfillment of the Old Testament and the fulfillment of Judaism, right? So all throughout the Old Testament of the Bible, right, ancient Judaism, right, what was the main things that they did? They would go to the temple and they would offer different sacrifices, different acts of worship. In modern Judaism, it's kind of confusing because there's not a temple anymore. The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, right? So it's kind of like an identity crisis in some ways at a Jewish worship service, right? So Catholics, interestingly enough, a lot of those strange rituals we do, right, it actually comes from Judaism. It comes from the Old Testament. When Jesus came to earth, he said, I came not to abolish the law, right, meaning everything in the Old Testament, but to fulfill it, right? So for us as Catholics, the Old Testament isn't just completely erased now. A lot of it is still relevant to us today, right? We're living the fulfillment of it, right? So like when you go to a Catholic church, for example, it's still structured just like the Jewish temple was. There's an outer court, which we call the narthex, right? There's the inner sanctuary where all the people gather. We call that the nave in the Catholic Church. And then there's the sanctuary where the sacrifice takes place, and the sanctuary where the altar is, right? Just like in the temple. The holiest place in the temple was called the Holy of Holies, right? It was behind a veil. As Catholics, we have the tabernacle where we keep the Eucharist, right? Oftentimes, there's a veil to cover it, right? Reminiscent of the Holy of Holies. So many things we do as Catholics, if they seem strange, if they seem weird, it's because they come from Judaism. You go into a Catholic church and you see the golden box, the tabernacle where the Eucharist is kept, right? The bread of the presence of Christ himself, right? Similar to the bread of the presence of the Old Testament. Right? There's a lot of different things that we do. Even confession, right? Catholics, we have this idea of the sacrament of confession that we need to go and confess our sins to a priest. Did you know that in ancient Judaism, they actually had a form of confession? There was something called a sin offering. You would come and you would bring an animal to be sacrificed, but before you killed the animal, you'd go up to the altar, go up to the rail, right? And you would tell the priest the sin you had committed. And then the priest would slit the throat of the animal, right? That was the sin offering, a foreshadowing of what we do as Catholics, right? So many things in Catholicism, especially when it comes to the Mass, the ways that we worship, if it seems strange, it's because it's rooted in the Old Testament. It's rooted in the Old Covenant, right? In ancient Judaism. Even a lot of the structures in the Catholic Church, right? Why do we have bishops and priests and deacons, this hierarchy of people, right? It's because that's the way it was in the Old Testament. You had the high priest, you had the Levites, right, who would be kind of like the deacons, they assisted the priests. And then you'd have the other descendants of Aaron, who were the priests offering sacrifice. One of the coolest things about Catholicism is that we don't believe that everything in the Old Testament was just for naught, right? We believe it was prefiguring, foreshadowing what we are doing still today in the Catholic Church. That's why we do so many weird things as Catholics. It comes from the Old Testament and ancient Judaism.